King Animal by Soundgarden. This may be an eye-opener for some of you because, well, some of you may not have even been alive the last time there was a Soundgarden release. It's crazy considering it was in the middle part of the 1990s. Here it is, 2012. Some of you might actually be 16 years old. Either that or 17 or 18, and you were an infant. Either way, King Animal is the triumphant return of Soundgarden, and Chris Cornell himself has had a myriad of journeys ever since then. He's done some time with Audioslave, he's done some time doing curious solo works, including the amazing Euphoria Morning, but then the very weird Scream, considering he just has kind of worked a little bit more in the terms of traditional pop music with that one, including working with Timbaland. And Kim Thayil has kind of just done it all. He's worked with artists such as Sun, so there you go. His range of diversity certainly need no introduction. However, this is a band that was huge in Seattle. So what's the first thing that they talk about? Seattle. The place where grunge was on the map during the latter part of the 1980s, but definitely a huge force in America during the 1990s. Bands such as Alice in Chains, Nirvana, Stone Temple Pilots, Mudhoney, Mother Love Bone, Pearl Jam, you name it. Those are the bands that we still hear today, but in Seattle, they are a huge force and a huge part of their music and cultural history. Well, reflecting on that today, going back to Seattle is kind of different, considering, well, a lot of things happen whenever time changes. Time definitely waits for no one, and Chris Cornell makes that certainly apparent in this opener and opening single, the kickoff single off of King Animal, and it's just kind of a reflectionary song of a king that's kind of returning to his throne after a long period of time, realizing that, for one, it's not his throne anymore, and for two, things have certainly changed a whole hell of a lot. And you know what? He really doesn't want to reclaim that throne because, well, the way things are the way things are. Time marches on, as they say. It's kind of a weird way to metaphorize this album, considering there is a lot of different experimentation laced within. There's definitely portions of time where you feel very akin to Chris Cornell's solo material. You also feel that the 90s are not necessarily completely and totally dead. The traditional Soundgarden sound does make periodic presence on this album, but there's also some songs that almost sound like bands like the Gin Blossoms that also during the same period of time in the 90s were getting a lot of attention because of upbeat pop melodies that, really were able to break through on both adult contemporary, traditional radio, and also on alternative radio stations. So there's kind of a little bit of a wide spectrum there. Overall, this album definitely has a really good flow to it, and the experimental vibe is something that will only piss off those who are really hoping for an album full of Fell on Black Days, Spoon Man, and other Soundgarden classics, kind of, well, with different titles and different song structures and melodies and all that stuff. It's not the way the band operates. The way the band operates is actually kind of refocusing their efforts from Down on the Upside, which, while it was able to spawn a single or two, was considered to be a bit of a disappointment. They're also able to channel in some of their older energy, but kind of refocus it in directions that seem to be a little bit more similar to Cornell's solo work, almost like this is a Cornell solo project that has all the members of Soundgarden included. So, with that said, the lyrical poetry is certainly still there, and vocally it definitely has the feel of a little bit of Euphoria Morning mixed in with Down on the Upside. So, with that being said, it's really not a bad effort whatsoever. In fact, there's a lot of tracks here that would feel right at home in the Soundgarden discography. I have a feeling that some people are going to be very dissatisfied with this, that they're really going to be lusting for that old school Soundgarden gusto and flavor and depression, the depression that seemed to make grunge music such a powerful force in the first part of the 90s after everything that happened in the 1980s. The drug-related force, the absolute just doom and gloom is not necessarily all there on this album, whereas it is sort of there lyrically, but musically it feels a little bit too upbeat in some locations, I think some people will think. But overall, the feel is just the same. It's just that the way in which it's being presented is slightly different. And if you remember some of the kind of unsung Soundgarden discography track heroes from albums such as Bad Motor Finger, this is something that's been slightly omnipresent with the band throughout the course of their history. These are just the unsung heroes of their discography, the ones that are only subtly appreciated by the most diehard of listeners. So with that said, King Animal is actually a surprising little album worth of songs. I think it is a proper album for a comeback. However, like I said, Perhaps the best is still yet to come. Perhaps they'll experiment a little more. Who knows? Because as of right now, it's just damn good to have a new Soundgarden album out there. It's just damn good to know that these guys are back. It's just damn good to know that Live to Rise, which was a fairly decent song, well, wasn't a one-trick pony. Instead, there's better songs out there. In fact, this whole album probably beats that song with a stick. But either way, that's all that needs to be said. Fantastic album, but maybe a little bit lacking. I give it an 8.